Last year, if you weren't here, and I know there are some new faces here, we hosted a panel of 3 Jewish women civil rights activists, 2 freedom riders, and 1 woman who helped integrate Baltimore restaurants and Gwynn Oak Amusement Park. This year, this really wasn't intentional, but this year, obviously, we've switched to the males. So we have as our speakers this year, on your right, Fred Pincus, Professor Emeritus from UMBC of Sociology. He just retired after 44 years there. He was one of the original, close to original faculty at UMBC. And next to him, Larry Ageloff, who was active in CORE, Congress of Racial Equality's employment discrimination work, I should say employment anti-discrimination work in Baltimore, and he's going to tell you all about that. I'm not going to say a whole lot about the Baltimore Jewish Cultural Chavurah. If you signed our mailing list, you will be getting more in the mail. And we also have business cards back there, and on the business card is our website, which you can check out. And if you missed all that, you can get it after the speakers when we have refreshments and mingling. But this is the second time we've done this, as I said, and we think this is a very important holiday for us to commemorate. Just a little bit more about the Chavurah, and incidentally, the word Chavurah is Hebrew for community. And we have generally 2 gatherings a month, usually with a speaker or some type of program. Sometimes it's a movie. And we celebrate some of the major Jewish holidays. And as I said, if you sign the list, you'll be getting 2 reminders a month about those activities and a electronic newsletter. Okay, here's our format. We're going to have 2 speakers, as you see before you, and following the speaker, they're going to go one after the other. Then we'll have a question and answer period. Then we will have time for refreshments and socializing. And we can stick around here quite a while. We actually have the room till 4:30. And just 2 other things I want to mention before we begin. In the back, at the front, at the area where you came in, there was a book for sale. This is from the Jewish Museum of Maryland, and it's called Generations. This is their regular publication. This was a special issue called The Search for Social Justice, which is on various human rights movements in Baltimore and how the Jewish community was involved in them. It's a really excellent book, and it's only $10, and all the money goes to the Jewish Museum of Maryland. And in here, there is an interview with Larry Ageloff and his wife, Helene, who I said was one of our speakers last year. She was a freedom rider, and that's how I originally found out about the Ageloffs and their stories. Oddly enough, I had worked with Helene about 20 years ago and never knew about her involvement in the civil rights movement. The other thing is that on the table in the front we have a can which is for donations to Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Every year our organization chooses either a charity or a cause to donate money to. That's our choice for this year. What that organization does is implied in the name. Americans United for Separation of Church and State. If you want to contribute to that, please feel free to do that during the break or after. Okay, so we're going to start with Larry Ageloff, and at some point in Larry's talk, he's going to ask me to read something as part of his presentation. Larry Ageloff.
Thank you. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be able to participate the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. I want to thank Father Ra and Bob for inviting me to take part in this. I've been asked to give a talk about my involvement in civil rights, and so we may as well get started with that. I came down from Baltimore in 1958 to work for the Social Security Administration, and came down with my wife and daughter. There must be romance in the air of Baltimore, because a year later my son came. So I really had a delightful family. I really was very, very lucky. I had a lovely wife, 2 lovely children. And I really liked my job. I did serious policy work, and I found it intellectually stimulating, and more importantly, I liked the product and the audience we were serving. We were helping the most vulnerable members of society, the elderly and the disabled. So I was really very, very pleased. And in addition, in fact, I was doing well by doing good. I mean, I was able to clothe my family, feed my family, and house my family. Now fast forward a few years later, and I'm working at Social Security, as I said before. And one lunchtime, walking around the building, we were out in Woodlawn, by the way, by this time, walking around the building, and someone hands me a flyer. The flyer, in effect, says, we're going to have a demonstration on this and this day. The purpose of the demonstration is to do away with discrimination against blacks in Social Security, which amazed me. I never thought of Social Security as a discriminatory organization. So I found out who prepared the flyer, and I went to a meeting. And I started to observe things at work that I never looked at before. You know, perception becomes your reality. You can perceive a picture. We had some people over for lunch a few weeks ago, and one of our guests goes in at the Walters. And she was saying when she takes a group around to take pictures, she's concerned about their perception. What actually do they see? So that lesson is also adequate for it also tells you what life is. I mean, what you see is what you perceive, and that becomes your reality. I say this as an excuse, I would guess, to tell you that I really never noticed any racial discrimination, despite the fact that I was a young man. I came down here. I mean, there's nothing wrong with my eyes, nothing wrong with my mind, et cetera, et cetera. But it never dawned upon me. When I saw this flyer, I started looking at things a little differently. I try to look at things through a black person's eyes. Now, I had a work area, and adjacent to my work area was a great big room, maybe 5 or 10 times the size of this room, with hundreds of desks in it. The purpose of that room and the purpose of the workers in that room, they were to post earnings to the wage records for each person. Excuse me. If you walk through that room and these hundreds of desks, all you saw were black faces, not one single white face. If you looked to the window side of that room, which had some plastic partitions to separate the people who sat at the desks next to the windows from the other people, only white faces. Well, the white faces were all the supervisors. The black faces were all the workers. By going to a meeting or two from this group who sponsored the demonstration and who happened to be in that room, excuse me, and by going to the meetings, I found out what happened, that frequently the white supervisors, in order to be broken in, had to rely on the black workers, or a particular black worker. Excuse me, I beg your pardon. So that gave me a pretty good idea of the fact that there was discrimination. The other thing, the other factor that was, which I found very, very interesting, is the person who organized the people in that unit. His name was John Burley. John Burley was the chairman of CAUSE Employment Committee. And part of that flyer that I saw to begin with, it said, we're going to have a demonstration. And Dick Gregory is going to come down from New York to lead the demonstration. And sure enough, there was a demonstration. And sure enough, Dick Gregory showed up. And maybe about 50, 75, maybe even 100 people showed up for the demonstration. And we marched around the building carrying the appropriate signs. And actually, just that walking around the building at one time, plus the little bit of agitation that was going on by the workers, moved Social Security to start doing things, and things began to change. So although, when you're looking at Social Security, you're looking at a humane organization, an organization that prided itself on being a humane organization, and rightfully so. And yet, if discrimination was present in that agency, you could have an idea of how prevalent it is to our society in general. So I became a member of the CAUSE Employment Committee, and there were actually three people in that committee. John Burley, who was the chairman, Erwin Arbeck, a friend and colleague of mine, and myself. And CAUSE is a very loose organization. So if we wanted to have a demonstration someplace, we'd let the membership know, and hopefully enough of the members would join us. So what happened? We decided during our first, more or less, unorganized organizational meeting,